Welcome to the Journeyman's Bits. In this video I thought I'd look back at my last few months on linear fisheries, and in particular Smith's Pool. Now if any of you have fished linear, you know just how busy it gets, and I'm not a great one for slotting into small spaces and crowds, so I always ended up on Smith's Pool because it was the last one to fill up. And if you moved away from the car park area, then you're in with a chance of being on your own for a wee while, especially in midweek. So that's exactly what I did. I started fishing Smith's Pool. I'd move a fair way away from the car park area, and I found a nice swim that I fancied fishing, and I started feeling around with a lead trying to find a bit of gravel. And I think most people seem to fish it, from my observations, at long range. In fact, as far as you can chuck it, basically, forgetting the fact that people can actually fish the far bank. But anyway, I found some gravel, about 10 wraps, and I thought, well, that's perfect for me, because I don't think a lot of people are going to be fishing that particular area. So I proceeded to put a bit of bait in on that spot. Now it just felt like bare gravel, really. I couldn't feel weed at all, and the lead was coming back clean. It wasn't picking up any debris or anything. But when I actually put the camera over it and put it down, there was quite a bit of weed, or more weed than I realised, in the area, and it was quite silty as well. But that wasn't to become apparent immediately. That became apparent a bit later on. Anyway, I baited it up and started fishing it. And the first couple of sessions were really good. Unfortunately, back in those days, the sound on the videos wasn't particularly clever at all. And it's not particularly brilliant now, but it was even worse then. But the first few sessions were really good. I started picking up fish, and I was really happy with what was going on. So I ended up sort of fishing it every other week for a couple of months, from the spring onward, really. And obviously the more bait that was going in, the more the area was clearing. And it ended up that the baits were coming back tainted with silt, although you couldn't feel it because it was only a slim layer, I suppose. But the weed had cleared off it completely when I put the camera back in it and had another look at it towards the end of the sessions. So the fish had been in there grouping around and removing all the weed, and I had some really nice fish off there, and I eventually had a pair of 30s off of there. So this is kind of my experience on that pool, but it just got too busy in the end, and I decided to apply for the Guy Syndicate. I mean, one of the things they tell you is to walk around the water and have a look, see if you can find some fish. Well, I found, even in those days, it's probably even worse now, but I mean, if you tried doing that at linear, by the time you walk around a couple of times, half the swims that were available have disappeared. So you don't really get that option. You have to find a space fairly quickly. And I found on there that they would come to food. I mean, I think they patrolled most of it anyway, but they would definitely come to food. I mean, they'd show quite a long way away from where I was actually fishing, and you'd never see them really showing over the spots, but you'd certainly see them bubbling over the spots once they got their heads down and started feeding. But I was working on the premise and then confident in the fact that if I put bait in, they would come to me, and indeed they did. That has to be one of the prettiest fish I've ever caught. And weighing in at just over 25 pounds. It was a really thick, solid male fish. Well, on this particular trip, my usual swim was occupied, but the guy was only going to be spending another night there. So I left the bucket down there and went to fish further up towards the car park where there was some space and just set up camp lightly for the night. Had a couple of small fish, and there just seemed to be small fish showing in the area. So I was quite keen for them to get down the other end, and hopefully some of the bigger fish were still down there. Anyway, after a very quiet night, I started slowly packing away in the morning, and by mid-morning I got it all on the barrow and shipped down to the swim where I needed to be. The guy was just leaving, so I put in a load of spotted bait, 10 wraps out over my area, got the rods all sorted, set the camp up, and then just settled down for some, hopefully, big action. And as you can see, I started off with a nice scaly 19 pounder. And a little while later I had this 22 pounder, and it was on a pop-up that a friend of mine had made for me, and I was well chuffed to get the first fish on his bait for him. And about 10 minutes after returning this fish, I had another run, but unfortunately I suffered a hook pull on that one. These swans are determined to have a punch up. They're absolutely unbelievable. When I lost that fish in the middle of the night, I thought the chance had gone. That's the first early morning fish I've had for a while. 25 pounds, 8 ounces. And a corker she is too. There you go. From what I can see in the net, she's really been getting on the hemp. But she took a homemade cell, which is good. If I'm baiting up mid-session, I prefer to use a spod to put the bait in, as I think you can do it slightly more stealthily than you can with a spawn. At the beginning of a session, I've been using the new Fox spod, which can deliver bait quite quickly, but it's very cumbersome in the water and makes a lot of disturbance on the retrieve. But it does close up slightly better than the original spawn, which is a complete nightmare if you're using hemp, and it gets trapped in the mechanism and blows up over your head and bivvy. 'Gosh, I don't know if you can hear this, but Slovakia scored. Sky's open, thunder and lightning, torrential rain. And for once, I do hope we don't get a run. What a change in the day. £14, 2 ounces. What a sad sight. That's probably the 5th fish I've seen in as many weeks. And again I started a session in a swim close by to where I really wanted to be. Spent the night catching a couple of small tench, waiting for the following morning when it was going to be vacated so I could get back onto my baited spot. And it wasn't long till I was into a carp. It's taken a while to get here, but what a cracker. £23, 4 ounces. Beautiful, beautiful mirror carp. What a beaut. and taken on the flick rig too. She was the first decent fish I've had. What a beauty. Because I was fishing over low-lying weed, on 2 of the rods I was using pop-ups, and one of the pop-up rigs I was using was Ian Russell's flick rig. Now, that's been well publicised, but it started off as a short chod, if you like, attached to a soft braided hook link. And then when I fish it, I always fish it with a buoyant bag attached to it. So I'd fish it like that, with a buoyant bag on it. In the buoyant bag is some dissolving foam which keeps it popped up like that. So when the bag melts, the whole rig would just gently drop down to the bottom and sit on any low-lying debris or anything like that. Now that rig eventually morphed into something more akin to that. So instead of having the traditional ring swivel on there, it was connected to the braid with an all-bright knot, but fished in exactly the same way, attached to a small bag so it would melt and drop down slowly on the bottom. And that proved to be very successful. Disappointing night with a big southwesterly turned into a flat calm. 3:30 this morning, this rolled off. 28 pounds and 3 ounces. A new personal best on that flick rig I've been using. What a little charmer she is. And on a homemade cell pop-up. Doesn't get much better. What a beauty. Well, we've just come to the end of the first 24 hours without a bite. Been loads of bubbling in and around the area and on the baited area. Did have a few liners in the night, despite moving the baits around a bit. Didn't produce any bites. But it's been like that for a while now. Normally the action comes in the second 24 hours, so it's looking good for this evening and hopefully tonight. At last. After some absolutely amazing bubbling going on. Middle rod's gone. Oh, it's going to go under that damn tree. Damn it. Keep moving. Gosh, my legs are knocking. Now, I don't consider myself to play fish particularly hard. I tend to give them line fairly easily, but it looks like I'm hanging on to this one quite hard. And I really have no idea just how big it is. I know it's a decent fish, and it actually bolted at the landing net 3 times before I managed to get it to come over. But it turned out to be something a little bit better than I thought it was. And I'm doing all this with an audience as well.
That, didn't it?
Thought that wasn't happening a couple of times.
Are you going all right?
That's first one.
Really, yeah.
Since, yeah. Look at that. That's the first linear, £30, 3 ounces of pure joy. And Sean, those pop-ups, they really do work. How about that? There she is. What a beautiful fish to crack your 30 duck with. Absolutely fantastic. As you can possibly see, I'm just about to put some spot out. And put that, before putting that rod back in. And the left hand rod just ripped off. Oh my God, 31.8. Brace, a brace of 30s. As you can see, just as I was putting a couple of spuds in after that last fish, this baby went off. 31, 8 ounces, I can't believe it, a brace of 30s. bit like buses, eh? Fantastic. Yeah. Looks like a complete different fish on that side, isn't it? 31 pound, 8 ounces of sheer joy. Let's bear her back. Oh, there she goes. Come on, baby, you gotta go. Oh, thanks for that. I deserve that. Watching the professionals filming now. So, to celebrate catching of a brace of 30s, did I say brace of, yes, brace of 30s. We've got chicken in white wine sauce with rice and peas, only somebody forgot the peas, and tin peaches for pudding. Doesn't get any better. Looks like they're back on the bait again. Here we go. So, literally minutes before taking the rods out, this little baby turned up. 2710. What a beautiful linear. Absolutely thrilled. What a session. Top session. Here we go. Passing hemp, but I can't see much else. That was taken on one of my fruit specials. Absolute belter. There we are. 21 pounds, 3 ounces. A feisty male, I'd say. Just got to go back. I've got to run on the other rod, I think. Well, that second run was a mid-double fish, which was buried in a huge ball of weeds and got unhooked in the water. Here we go. £23, 6 ounces. First thing in the morning, after a very quiet night. I really don't know what the answer to all these birds feeding on the bait is. Do these diving birds feeding on my bait have the potential to put carp off feeding, or do the carp just carry on regardless? At one point there were 12 coots over the baited area. Or indeed, could a counter-argument be made that the bird activity diving on baits could actually bring the carp in to feed? If they're supposed to be inquisitive creatures that would come and have a look at what the birds were getting all excited about? I don't know. There we are. 16 and a half. That's the 7th fish, but the bigger girls seem to be eluding me at the moment. But not obviously put off by the birds feeding, which is good, but what a pretty little fish. Yeah. Little cracker, eh? Well, it's the final morning. There's quite a bit of change in the weather. The wind's picked up, it's getting much cooler. Rain's coming in from the west. However, we're slowly packing up. Finished on 8 fish, which is good, with 2 over 20, so a nice session. Well, a change of bait and a change of swims hasn't really done me any favours. There were some fish topping when I first got here, but it seems to have gone pretty quiet now, apart from the inevitable bird activity. Well, on this trip, I deliberately went somewhere else because I'd seen fish moving. And I had a couple of fish, but they weren't particularly big. But after a very quiet night with no activity at all, you've guessed it, in the morning I moved down to where I'd been having the fish. And I wasn't disappointed. Well, after another night of no activity at all, I've moved into a new swim. Set up camp, the rods are all out. And we're bringing the changes with the bait again. Well, the first night after the move, I had this lovely scaly 22-pounder, and it was on a wafter rig. Now, because all the weed had now gone from the area with all the bait in and all the feeding going on, instead of using pop-ups all the time, I was fishing a couple of rods on the wafter. Still continuing with 1 rod on the pop-up, but 2 on the wafters, and it was the wafters that were picking up the fish. Right, hope this audio's coming out. 21 pound on the nail. Second fish of the morning. On the same wafter rig. Got a new bait. It's been a real struggle this trip, but it's come good. Well, that was my last few months on the linear day ticket waters. Fortunately, I'm now got onto the Guy Syndicate. Took me nearly 3 years to do it, but I'm on there now. And for me, it's much more relaxing fishing. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet and you fancy getting involved, please feel free to do so. And I'll see you all again soon. Cheers for now. Now, since part 3 of Journeyman's Tales was out, and we went through the 400 subscriber mark, we're not actually far from going through the 500 subscriber mark. So I'm going to run another competition again. So if you want to put a comment in, as soon as we go through the 500, I'll do another draw, and the lucky winner will get one of the VW Journeyman caps. Anyway, thanks for subscribing if you already have done. If you want to get involved, please feel free to subscribe. But most of all, take care out there, and I'll see you all again soon. Cheers for now.